Okay, so let's start on chapter 13, which is about, sorry, I wasn't going to go that fast, which is about progress and performance measurement and evaluation. A bit in line with what we just talked about in concerning the case. But first I would like to mention that we only have one class to go in a week. And that day is going to be pretty packed. We have one exam and 2 chapters to finish, and then a summary. Some of you have actually contacted me wanting to know a bit about the exam. I guess some of you weren't too happy with the outcome of the last exam. Well, that is, I understand if someone is unhappy with a grade which is not meeting up to expectations. So we will try to find a place either before class or after to go quickly through the exams. I cannot send anything to you. I cannot open a database or anything. We haven't done that in this course. There's no library on previous exams. But I understand that I'm more than willing to suggest a special time where we can just meet and you can take a look at the solutions and see what went wrong. Because that, of course, is how you learn. So I'll let you know about that. Now, chapter 13 is about control. Controlling what is happening is like risk management during implementation, but it's about more than that, basically. So we are here now, just about to finish. On Mondays in a week, we will cover this chapter here, which is quite important because we need to know how to close projects. There has to be a formal way to close a project so that you can draw a line and say the project is formally finished. This is the deliverable to the client. Everything is now released. People go back to the previous jobs. Equipment that was rented is sent back, etc., etc. All the bookkeepings is in place, the total cost, everything. There has to be a clear table once the project is finished. And then I will go briefly into chapter 15, which is about international project, mainly just to give you an idea of what can go wrong. Few practical stories from my own experience, my own mistakes, something to show you which hopefully helps you to and prevent you from doing mistakes. But there's more on a let's say lighter notes this chapter than the other ones. So you can say formally we finished the book on chapter 14. Now there will be exam as well, but I will be soft on you when it comes to those 2 chapters. There will be no questions from those 2 chapters, so you can just focus on 10, 11, 12, and 13 for the exam in a week. But of course you will get questions from those 2 at the final exam, which I think is on April 3rd. I think someone said so. Okay, so but this is not that much really. We can manage all this. The exam is only 1 hour, and then we'll cover this. So I'm not so worried about Monday in a week. And of course we have until 3:20, I think, to do this, and then I find the space for the exam evaluation. Who is Eric Clapton, by the way? Who is Eric Clapton, by the way? Sorry? He's a musician. Yes. He's not the author of the book. No. 5 of you thought he was. Yes. Okay. Or maybe they were joking with me. I don't know. Anyway. The need for control. How does a project get 1 year late? Well, it doesn't happen quickly or doesn't happen overnight. It happens 1 day at a time. You start missing out, you start running late, and then it sort of accumulates, and it's like a snowball thing. The snowball gets bigger and bigger, and suddenly you're facing a huge problem, which is that you're 1 year late. Now, the need for control is obvious, and having control is necessary to hold people accountable. We need to be sure that the team members are doing what they're supposed to do. So we need to control them from time to time. The stakeholder needs to control the project manager and his team at any point in time by just picking up the phone and say, okay, tell me or meet me tomorrow and tell me where are we in terms of time and budget. And if the project manager isn't really controlling those issues, then he or she will have a problem explaining to the stakeholder the day after. It is actually also to prevent small problems from escalating. If you spot a small problem during a regular control mechanism, if you want, then of course you can prevent it from becoming a snowball with a bigger consequences. And it keeps focus. It keeps everyone focused on what it is that we are supposed to deliver. I was very it was interesting to listen to Vidar earlier, where he was talking about traditional versus modern project management, or modern and traditional projects. Traditional project management was basically when everything was fixed, the outcome was fixed. You are going to build a huge dam or a bridge, and it's supposed to look like this. And that's fixed, and then you work towards that. But modern project management allows more space for changes. That is what he said. Now, you might think that is in contradiction with what I have been talking about, which says proper planning prevents poor project performance. It doesn't. But it sort of, if we have to change the scope during the implementation, we know how to do it. Traditional project management didn't really think that was possible, because you don't necessarily make changes in the construction of a bridge or a big dam underways. You just decide this is how it's going to look, or a tunnel. You don't change that unless you run into serious problems. But today we are more open towards changes, because the market condition is different, because competition is different. There is a lot of pressure on the stakeholders. Bring this new version of the phone earlier into the market, etc. And we know how to tackle it. It's not just about crashing or adding resources. We know how to tackle it. So I think it was an interesting input into our discussion. So the structure of a project monitoring system. Now, don't think of it as a complicated system. It's more like a common sense sort of way of working. It's a process, as everything is in project management. Involves determining what data to collect. Just as when you're estimating, you can go beyond what is necessary and go into too many details. So just the same here. How much information are you actually in need of when you are implementing the project? Is it enough just to know about the cost spent and the time used? Or is there something else we need to know? How, when, and by whom to collect it, and then analyze it and report it to someone. And we need to know to whom. We need to know who is it of the stakeholders. Is it only the client, or are there other stakeholders that need to know regularly how we are doing? And this brings us back to what I've said about the stakeholders several times. We need to identify who they are, what are their needs, and basically tailor-made our approach. What kind of information do we give them from one time to another? It's different. So here is a list of things that we need to take into account. What is the current status in terms of time and cost? That would be the obvious number one question by any stakeholder to a project manager during a status meeting. How much will it cost to complete? When is it completed? Are the problems that need to be addressed, etc.? What are the causes for overruns? What did we get for the money spent? That would be a very interesting question by the stakeholder. If cost overrun is now, can we forecast total overrun? Things like that. Those would be questions that any any controller is aiming at answering. So what we need to have is a system that addresses those questions and many others. And we call it the control process, or as you can say, a project monitoring system. Don't get sort of too, let's say, focused on the sort of whether it's what kind of a system it is. It's basically the process that we need to understand. When we talk about the control process, we are talking about comparing planned schedule in terms of time and cost versus actual. So we thought we were going to spend so much and use so much time. How actually are we doing? Are we spending so much and so much time, or are we doing better or worse? And to do this, you need to use the information from the work breakdown structure once again. It is actually the key. It's or let's say it's more like the backbone of a project. So never forget. Setting the baseline with using the work breakdown structure. The baseline would be the total cost of the project. After having done the first step, work breakdown structure, and then added the cost on to the deliverables and work packages, and put in the time scheduling, etc. Measuring progress and performance, comparing plans against actual, and then of course taking action. It doesn't help anything if we spot a problem, if we see that we have spent too much money and then we don't do anything about it. Then that is a serious sort of mistake that we will be doing as project managers. Here we have we can also control time. You know, it's not only cost. It's two things that we need to focus on when we are talking about control, and it's time and cost. When we are controlling the time element, you know, what, how well have we spent and used our time, then we can use the Gantt charts to help us understand. Now this one would be something that we would do in the beginning. You see, this is what we expect to be the time frame. This is what we expect to be the time frame from for activity A, B, C, etc. But this doesn't tell us anything else than that. We don't know how we're doing. We just know that in this case, the upper chart is telling us this is what we expected. Okay? But we can use the Gantt chart, and the Gantt chart is actually very important in terms of controlling in project management. We can use it by adding on actual completed, this box here, add it into the chart at the same place as the baseline duration is. So this is what we thought we would do in the beginning. This is what has actually been the case. And this tells us much more. This tells us actually, yes, we were on track here. Nothing came up. We just used 2 time units to do this activity A, and fine, no problems. But then this also shows us the slack that is needed and the remaining duration, and it also shows us the connections between activities. Like, when can we start this one? It hasn't, you know, and so on. How are they connected, etc. Can you see one thing that has changed from the Gantt chart we used in the beginning to plan the time frame for our project, and then to the one which we have put up now? We are not all the way through. We're just halfway through, as you can see. But we still can see that something has happened. Can you see what that is? Can you see what is different? According to the plan, we were supposed to do this in 12 time units. But obviously, we are delaying. We are behind schedule. Because the new plan tells us that activity F will actually not be finished until at the end of time unit 12 or at the beginning of time unit 13. Because that one cannot start until D is finished, for example, as you can see here. So this chart tells us much more than this one. This one actually tells us really accurately in terms of time, how are we doing. And sorry to say, we are 1 time unit behind schedule. Now, there is also one another control mechanism or a control chart called which can be used, which is used to evaluate the past performance. This is something you would key into a computer as software, and this is, and this is today. You want to see how has the project, in terms of time and money, etc., how has it been developing so far. And you can actually use this to predict ahead. Okay, it seems now that we are on the track. We are now developing nicely from minus. Here we are actually behind schedule when we have gone down, and actually it started off well, then we started to lose control, or something went wrong because we started to be behind schedule only in second time unit, which is quite early in the process. And then further delays happened in time unit 3, but after that we have been developing in a positive direction, and we have actually now are ahead of schedule. So this chart can tell us quite a lot about how things have developed so far. This is the point in time which we are looking at, and it can be, used to progress and sort of estimate how it will develop ahead. You could also use this to make sort of take a look at development between milestones. Just be familiar with those different sort of tools that you can have or use to gain better control over information on how you are proceeding. And then comes the earned value concept, which is something you have to be well familiar with. The earned value concept, or the schedule system, is not new. It goes back, has been used in the military and various others. So, but that is not of issue. What is more important is, what is it about? It's an integrated project management system based on the earned value concept that uses time-phased budget baseline to compare actual and planned schedule and cost. The time-phased budget baseline is the one that you can get when you have put in the time and the money per time unit and accumulated at the bottom, you remember, and that is when you get the final sum of the project, and that is what we call a baseline. You have to use that in the earned value system, compare with actual and planned cost, so that you can get the information that you need. Time-phased costing that provides the project budget baseline. That is what we need. It corrects the failure of most monitoring systems to connect a project actual performance. This is what is very important, to its schedule and forecast budget. Links together time, cost, and work being carried out. So read carefully about the earned value, all the terms related to it. I'm going to go into it in a minute, but not so deeply. I leave it for you to go into the details. Planned, just to take a look at this example. Planned cost for the first 5 weeks in our project are 2 million. So when we check, we have two situations. What would be better? Actual cost for the first 5 weeks is 2.4 or 1.7. Which one is better? We don't know. And it's impossible for us to answer which one is better, because we don't know. We don't know if there is a cost overrun. Is it, or if the cost overrun is because we are ahead of schedule? Is this the reason? Or let's say, is the reason we have 2.4 because we have been doing so well? We are actually ahead of schedule. We have spent more money than we were supposed to do because we are ahead of schedule. Is that the reason? Or does it reflect that we are behind schedule and over cost? We don't know exactly what it is. Is it because we are behind schedule or because some work hasn't started? What kind of information tool could actually answer this question? Bless you. The best way to see exactly where and how the project is developing in terms of time is the Gantt chart, the tracking Gantt chart. That is something you need to keep in mind. There are other things that we can use to tell us sort of approximately how the project is developing, but if you want to know exactly, or at least with as much accuracy as possible, you have to use the tracking Gantt chart to see, as we just saw, where exactly are we in terms of implementing the different activities. Okay, so earned value, you need to know these terms. It's the percentage complete times of the original budget, or let's say it's budgeted cost of the work performed. It's a budgeted cost of the work that actually has been performed. And the word basically says quite a lot. Earned value. It is the value that you have earned because you've already implemented. Planned value is then what you thought it would be costing you, the time phase baseline of the value of the work scheduled, budgeted cost of the work scheduled. This is the baseline that we can create after putting the cost into the time units and accumulate it, and then we get the final total figure. That is the planned value or the baseline. And then, of course, actual cost. What does it actually cost us to implement the project? The actual cost of the work performed. So those three terms you need to know and understand, because those terms you use to calculate two of the variances that we can use to measure how we are doing. Scheduled variance and cost variance. Okay? And here they are. Cost variance is the difference between the earned value. Bless you, you are all, or some of you having a cold. Well, be careful. Cost variance is the difference between the earned value and the actual cost of the work completed. This is the equation. Cost value is the earned value minus the actual cost. Scheduled variance, is the difference between the earned value and the baseline to date. So scheduled variance is the EV minus PV. What I need to see at the exam is that you understand what do those two variances tell us. The cost and the schedule variance. Why do we need to know what they are? And if they are in a minus or if they are plus, what does that mean? That is what I need to see at the exam, that you fully master. I will not put up, and I promise you there will be no silly questions at the final exam like we had one example of in the last exam. Okay? But this is something you need to be familiar with, those three terms and what information they can actually provide you with. Sorry? Cost variance. Profit. Now it's don't think about it like that. It's not a profit in that sense. It's not. It's basically a variance which well, let's see. It's a variance that can tell you whether the project is going well or it's under or below budget. If you can take a look at page 467. Do you have the latest? 467. So a negative cost variance means that the project is over budget. It means that what you have actually spent is more than you sort of planned in a way. Same as the scheduled variance. If that one is negative, then it suggests that the project is behind schedule. So the cost variance relates to the cost, or let's say of the budget. The scheduled variance relates to the time element of the project. I suggest all of you to read those two pages quite carefully, 466 and 467, especially figure 13.5, because that figure explains the nature of these two variances. At the exam, I will have to check whether you understand what they stand for and why it is necessary to bring them out during control, let's say the controlling process of project management. Okay, the 5 steps of cost or schedule system we can now summarize in a way. First of all, you have to define, and it all starts in the work breakdown structure. You do the scope, the work packages, deliverables, everything which we have all gone through, your organizational units, resources, budgets, etc. This is the beginning, and you could also say this is kind of like a summary through the book. This is the process of setting up a proper system for our project management. It starts here. Then we develop the work and resource schedules, and we schedule resources to activities. You know, we sort of decide how many people we need at different activities, and we schedule them into our system. We attach them to different tasks. Okay. Then time-phased work packages into a network. We put the cost of different work packages into the network. Remember, time units and then all the cost item in each box, and then accumulated cost gives us the baseline, the total cost of the project, which is done here in the stage 3. Develop a time-phased budget using the work packages included in an activity, and the accumulated budget, which is the planned value or the baseline. Remember that planned value and the baseline is the same thing. We are talking about the total cost of the project. At the work package level, collect the actual cost for the work performed, which is then actual cost, multiply % complete times original budget, which will give you earned value. And then, once you have those, you will not be asked to calculate any of this, so don't worry. And of course, this is something that any software will just produce, but you need to understand the nature of those terms. Once you have planned value, the total cost, the actual cost, and the earned value, then you can start computing the variances. So this is something we have all done already, you know. What we are now adding to it is the final thing, which is the cost and the time control mechanism. And to do that, we need those information here. We need planned value, actual cost, and earned value, and then we can compute the cost variance and the schedule variance. And just think about it, you know, we have started the project, and we just need to know simply every other week or every other month, how is it developing in terms of time? Are we ahead of schedule or behind schedule? How is it developing in terms of budget? Are we under budget or ahead of budget? Just think about it like that. And the variances can tell you not fully, but partly how we are doing. Okay? And this is also how it looks in terms of, if we sort of take a look at this, look at it as a flow chart. We have in the beginning the scope, the deliverables, the work breakdown structure, then the organizational structure comes in. We have all the work packages, we put in time, resources, etc., and all the things that we have planned, schedule, we have the baseline, which is the cost, and we start pulling out the actual cost and the earned value, and then we are ready to do the control. So just to show you how it connects, you can use this one to sort of summarize how it connects, and also this one. Are you with me? Okay. Cost variance, just to go back to that issue, indicates if the work accomplished using labor and materials cost more or less than was planned at any point in the project. It basically tells us have we spent more than we planned to have spent at that point in time. I am sure we don't think like this, for example, when we go abroad shopping. We think, okay, I might spend something like this, and then midway through, do you stop, sit down and have a beer and think, okay, how much have I spent compared to what I was going to spend? I don't think we do that. But in project management, you need to do that. Why? Well, first of all, because you have, well, yes, to report it, but also because you have, in the beginning, a budget. We also, as individuals, when we go abroad, we have a budget, but we also have a credit card, it helps if you want to spend a bit more. But when you're doing project management, you don't have a credit card. You can go to your client and say, we need to spend more money because we run into problems. But we try to avoid that, right? Schedule variance, and this is important because, I'll just go back here, sorry. What you're calculating here are figures, dollar terms. We have cost, we have money, sort of indicators. So what you're calculating there are figures. So the schedule variance presents an overall assessment in dollar terms. This is important. Of the progress of all work packages in the project schedule to date. It's basically assessing the direction of all the work in the project. But remember from just a bit earlier, the schedule variance is supposed to tell us about the time. Are we ahead of schedule in terms of time? And how can a dollar unit tell us something like that? It cannot. But it can actually, if the variance is negative, then we know that we are running behind schedule. We don't know how much, but we know that the dollar term says that we are running behind schedule. If it is positive, then we are actually ahead of schedule. But we need to know in real-time units. We cannot just say, okay, it's not enough to know so-and-so just about that we are behind schedule or ahead of schedule. It's not enough. We need to know exactly, are we 1 month ahead or 2 months or one time unit? And how can we know that? The Gantt chart. The tracking Gantt chart is the only way to know exactly how are we developing in terms of time. So remember this is important. This gives you a kind of a feeling for how the project is developing in terms of time, but because it's a dollar unit, you have to go to the tracking Gantt chart to see the printout from the baseline, from the planned sort of time consumption, if you want, to the real time that we have used on all the activities. And that is where we see exactly whether we are 1 unit, 1, 2 or 3 time units late in the schedule, or whether we are on schedule or even ahead of schedule. So this is important. And this is then to sort of summarize how those lines would look. And this would be computed from a software, how those lines would look in terms of if we would have a cut, or let's say a stop here and would like to bring out the information here. The actual cost is here. The baseline is the dotted line, this one. Oops, sorry. And you can also see that from this point, this is where we are doing our control mechanism in the middle, but you can see that the computer system has actually estimated budgeted cost to the completion. It has basically estimated from here how much it will cost to complete. And you can see how the development is estimated as well. And you can also see the actual cost has developed like this, and the software is estimating how it will develop to the end of the project, sorry. And then you can see the scheduled variance and the cost variance. And I'll leave it for you now to, I know this might sound a bit complicated, but what I want you to really focus on is the nature of the schedule variance and the cost variance. The planned value, which you all know by now, is sort of taken from the time-phased budget and schedule, which we do in previous stages. And the actual cost, once you have those two, you can start, and those three actually, you can start calculating the variances. I need to see that you understand what the variances are telling us. And this, I just mentioned, is very important. It's not enough to know the scheduled variance. We need to see the tracking Gantt chart to know exactly how the development of the project is in terms of time units. Okay, there is an example in the book which is on page 467, which is referring to the digital camera example, called Developing a Status Report, a Hypothetical Example. I think I would completely confuse you if I would go through it here and right now. Read it slowly and carefully. What I need you to take away from that example, it all starts once again with the work breakdown structure and the money put into the structure, which we have gone through. I'm just going to give you sort of a starting point here. Organizational breakdown structure comes in. We see where the money is put, which organizational departments. We have a Gantt chart showing us the baseline duration. This is what we expected to do. Remember, the baseline tells us what we planned or expected or sort of thought it would look like. We have the slack, we have the baseline. And this is the time-phased budget or the baseline. All the activities, duration, early start, late finish, the slack. Remember when we were delaying all this, etc. And here you have the time periods and the planned value for activity A is 20, 10 for each time unit, and we have 2 time units as indicated here in duration. And you just put this in here, 5 and 10, 20, 30, etc. This adds up to 100. And just to show you where this is taken from, remember A, 20. So this is how it all connects. It starts once again with the work breakdown structure, organizational breakdown structure, and you start putting money into the different places. And here you have the PV, which is necessary, the planned value, which is 320 million or whatever, which is the total estimated cost of our project. Spread out into the time units like this, like shown here, okay? This is then what we would call out, if we have a status meeting and we would say, okay, now we want to check how we're doing in terms of cost and in terms of time. So we need a status report. And the computer system would give us something like this. And here you can see, remember the cost variance and the schedule variance, how they are computed. And this status report shows you how much of the task is completed. After period 1, only 10% of task A is completed. And how is that possible? Well, that is because A is 20 altogether, but only 10 in each time unit, okay? And then we go back here. So 50% is complete after the first one. The earned value is 10. Cumulative total is 10. Actual cost is 10. And planned value is 10. Everything is basically as it is. There's no changes. Everything is on time. And you can see the cost schedule, cost variance and the scheduled variance are both at 0. So everything is fine and normal there. Okay. Then we go on to the next period, and we complete activity A, adding on the other 10. So we have now 10, but this is then here we have, however, a change. The cost variance suddenly has a minus figure, which says that we are now starting to run beyond budget. Period 3, then you start pulling in those that actually you can start on in period 3. This is period 3. And that would be activity B, activity C, and activity D. And here you can see the numbers that you put in the next few activities. And just here you can see B, which puts in 5 and is 33% finished. And then it sort of changes the picture. We are still on schedule, but we are behind in the budget. This is what you should read out, or let's say, what is the word? Interpretate. This is what you should actually be able to read from this kind of status report. So I might show you something like this at the exam and ask you to explain what is happening at this. Let's say, what would be happening at the end of period 3? Okay, well then you would say, 1 task is finished, 3 tasks are in the making. One is 60% finished. The other one is 20, and the last one 35, so 33. And the actual cost is 90. The plant value is 60, but we are behind budget in terms of cost variance, but we are ahead of schedule. Right? So this you would have to explain at the exam, so it would be quite a long alternative in the multiple choice question, but you know. So go slowly through this example. I hope I've sort of pushed you a bit ahead. Go slowly through the example. See all the periods. The periods, just to underline, are referring to those here. Okay. All the way down to the last one. The example just shows the first 7. And then this graph summarizes the development through the first 7. It doesn't look very appealing, I know, but this is just to show you how things have developed. And I think I also can confirm that I once used this at the exam, asking students to explain what has happened at what is the situation at the end of period 7. And both variances are now in minus. And that means what? That means that we are running late and we have spent too much money. But, as I said, the scheduled variance will only tell us sort of in dollar terms that the whole project has a negative variance in terms of dollar terms, yeah. But we need to go to the tracking Gantt chart for time precision to be absolutely sure how much we are running late. And that would be then this one. The baseline is the this box, and then the actual one and the remaining duration. And you can see here what is expected to be the final final, or let's say the finishing point of the project. So go slowly through this, connect with the models and the photos, and I'm sure you will sort of get the feeling for it. And this is something that you should not pay any or not much attention to. This is how it would look if you would sort of print out the final situation after doing the calculation on the variances. There are 2 more terms I need you to be familiar with, and then we are more or less done for today. There are indexes. The variances, the cost and schedule variance, they tell us what is the situation now. They're just figures, either plus or minus, and they tell us how is the situation now. Not how it will be tomorrow, and not how it was yesterday, but what is it now. So that is why some have thought that indexes are better indicators of development. And we talk about cost performance index, which you can see measures the cost efficiency of work accomplished to date. Basically, how efficiently have we used the money so far in the project, and then how efficiently have we used the time, or let's say spent time. So cost performance index and scheduling performance index will tell us the direction of the project. Not how it is exactly now, but more the direction of the project. So you can see if the cost index is is more than 1.5, then we are under cost. The scheduled performance index, if that one is more than 1, then we are ahead of schedule. And the same goes for the minus. If we are under 1, then we are over cost, we have spent too much, and behind schedule, we are running late. So be familiar with the index as well as the variances and what they are telling us. And this is how it looks if you put them into the or let's say if that would be printed out to show you graphically. There is also formulas to tell us how we can calculate the remaining cost of the project. I just want you to be familiar with the fact that we can, and I'm not going to go into details here. This is something I sort of put less emphasis on than the other. But you can see here in our example, taking the baseline through 320, the earned value, you can use that to put into the equation. But as I said, just be familiar with that. There is, of course, a way to calculate how we can finish from those points that we are pulling out as a control point. You can calculate how much it will cost to finish the project, but let's not focus too much on that right now. And then there are common formats for progress reports. But of course the main thing is, like Viðar was also mentioned in meeting minutes, for example, but it all has the same purpose: documentation of the development. Put down on paper what is the document, what is the sort of development, what is the situation at different points in time, and show and learn from it. Progress since last report, current status of the project, you should always focus on those points here. Cumulative trends, and you could use the indexes for that. What is it and how is it developing, etc. Problems and issues since last report. Always try to sort of pull as much as possible in terms of learning information out of it. What can we learn from development now from the last point of control? New variances, new problems identified, and then how can we correct? So if you follow this, every time you make a new sort of control, let's say status report, then you're always pulling out the points that you can learn from. You're always improving your capabilities, improving the process, improving the system. Then at the end of the chapter there is a discussion about scope creep, which we have already talked about, and you have done a case on. It underlines the importance of focusing on the scope in the beginning of the project and not changing it unless it's strictly necessary. The baseline will change, and this is just to show you how it could change. Depends, of course, on what kind of scope changes there are. Just to show you how it could look if you print out a change of baseline after changes in scope. Okay, discussion points. Describe the structure of a project monitoring system. I would like to say the first question would be, why do we need to monitor? Why do we need to control? And that is, in my mind, quite an important question. Just as in the case, why do we need to continue risk management after the project has been implemented? What is a scope creep? I think you should know by now why that, what that is. And how does a tracking Gantt chart help to communicate project progress? And remember, this is more reliable as an indication of time utilization, where we are in terms of time, than the schedule variance, because the schedule variance is calculated from figures and is measured in dollar terms, but this is showing us the time units and that sort of real-time usage of the project. Any questions? Any comments? Or are you